Hi there, and welcome back to English Without Limit. I'm Julia, and I'm so happy you're here with me today. Whether you're walking to work, cooking dinner, sitting on the train, or just taking a moment to breathe, this podcast is your space, a space to grow, to feel supported, and to practice English, without pressure and without fear. If you've ever felt embarrassed about your English or worried about making mistakes, let me tell you something important. This is not the place for perfection. This is the place for progress. We all start somewhere, right? I've met people from all over the world: Paris, New Delhi, São Paulo, Istanbul. And they often say the same thing. I understand some English, but I can't speak. Or, I get nervous when I try to listen to native speakers. And let me tell you, that is so common. If that sounds like you, you're not alone. That's exactly why this podcast exists. I want you to feel like you're talking with a friend, someone who understands the struggle and wants to help you through it. So take a deep breath. Let go of the pressure you've been putting on yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to memorize everything. You just need to listen, reflect, and let things start to click. Little by little. This journey doesn't have to be stressful. We're going to take it one step at a time. And I'll be right here with you. Imagine we're having a conversation. No pressure, no tests, just you, me, and the English language. Becoming a little easier every time we connect. And if this kind of support feels helpful to you, take a second to like this episode and subscribe. It helps more people find us and lets me know you want more content like this. But more importantly, it keeps you connected to a growing community. People just like you, ready to speak English with more confidence and joy. Now, let me ask you something. And I want you to be honest. Have you ever felt like you're listening to English every day? Watching YouTube, listening to music, podcasts, movies, maybe even repeating dialogues from your favorite TV shows? But still, when it's time to understand real English in real time, it just doesn't click. You pause, you rewind, and you still feel lost. You catch a few words here and there, but the full meaning disappears. Sound familiar? You're not alone. That is one of the most common struggles learners face. And here's the frustrating part. You're doing everything right. You're showing up. You're surrounding yourself with English. You're spending the time, but somehow you're still stuck. It's like walking in circles. Now here's the truth. And it might surprise you, listening in English, or in any language, doesn't get better just by hearing more English. Let me say that again. Listening doesn't automatically improve just because you hear more. Shocking, right? We've all been told the more you listen, the better your English will get. And yes, exposure is important, but exposure alone is not enough. What really improves your listening is not how much you listen, but how you listen. And that is the part most people miss. I've seen this again and again with learners from Madrid, Jakarta, Cairo, New York, Bangkok. They're smart, they're motivated, they're consistent, and still stuck. Why? Because they're consuming English passively. They press play on a video, nod along, maybe read subtitles, then move on to the next thing. It feels like progress, but it's not. It's background noise. It's entertainment. But it's not training your brain to understand real, fast English conversations. Think about it like this. Imagine trying to learn piano by watching someone play every day. You sit in front of the keyboard, you admire the music, you listen, you follow tutorials, but your fingers, they never touch the keys. Will that make you a better pianist? Probably not. It's the same with listening. You can't just admire the sound of English. You have to interact with it. Engage. Train your ears. Most learners don't realize when you rely too much on subtitles, you're not really listening. You're reading, and your brain gets lazy. It focuses on the screen instead of processing the sounds. Over time, that becomes a habit. You feel like you're improving because you understand the video. But the moment you remove the subtitles, the whole thing collapses. Suddenly, it feels like everyone is speaking too fast, or mumbling, or using strange words. But the truth is, they're not. You just haven't trained your ears to hear real English in real time. And here's one more truth. Native speakers don't pronounce words the way they're written. You know this already. English spelling and pronunciation can be confusing, but it goes deeper. When people speak, they link words, they cut sounds, they use rhythm and stress and melody. The sentence that's written in your textbook? It sounds totally different in real life, and unless you're listening actively for those patterns, they'll fly right past you. Let's start with a simple example. Take the sentence, "What do you want to do?" In a classroom, it sounds clear and easy. But in real life, it becomes, "What do you want to do?" If your ear isn't trained to hear that, you'll miss the meaning. Not because you don't know the words, but because your brain isn't ready to recognize the real spoken version. That's exactly why many learners feel frustrated. They've been taught the words, but not how those words actually live and breathe in everyday speech. I remember talking to a learner from Seoul. She had studied English for over 8 years, taken exams, had great vocabulary, could write essays. But when she visited her cousin in Toronto, she found herself lost in conversations. She said, "I thought I understood English, but now I'm not sure." That moment was painful, but it was also a turning point. She realized that all those years of passive exposure hadn't prepared her for real-world communication. Once she changed her approach, started training with short, focused audio clips, repeating phrases out loud, learning to identify the rhythm of native speech, her confidence grew. I've heard stories like this from learners in Rome, Cape Town, Mumbai, Chicago. They all say the same thing. Why didn't anyone tell me this earlier? And that's exactly why I'm telling you now. Because the sooner you understand this, the sooner you can start listening in a way that actually helps you grow. If you've ever felt like you're working hard but not getting anywhere, it's not because you're not trying. It's not because you're not smart. It's because the method you've been using doesn't work. For the kind of listening you want to achieve, passive exposure alone is not enough. You need focused, active practice that trains your ears to hear what your brain has never really heard before. And when you start doing that, the difference is huge. So if you've been feeling stuck, know it's not your fault. You just haven't been shown the right way to listen yet. But that's about to change. Today, I want to be very clear with you. You're here because you want to understand English better. Not just read it, not just memorize grammar rules or pass exams, but really understand what people are saying in real conversations. You want that confidence when someone talks to you in English, and instead of freezing or guessing, you actually understand the message. That's what this episode is about. We're going to talk about how you can finally change the way you practice listening so you start seeing real results. Not maybe, not someday, but now. Think of this episode as a reset. If you've been studying and listening to English every day, but still struggle to keep up with native speakers or rely too much on subtitles or translations, it's time to change how you practice. I know practice can sound boring. Maybe it reminds you of school or homework, but here's the truth. Most people don't really practice listening. They just expose themselves to English. And exposure without strategy doesn't lead to fluency. So here's what we'll do today. I'll help you understand why your current method might not be working, what's missing, and I'll share examples from learners just like you, from Berlin, Tokyo, Nairobi, Buenos Aires, people who changed one or two habits and finally made real progress. This isn't about working harder. It's about working smarter. And I want to guide you through that. The first step to changing your results is understanding the problem. The problem is not your brain, your accent, or your memory. It's the way you've been taught to listen. Most people think listening is passive, that you can just absorb English like a sponge and it will make sense eventually. But it doesn't work that way. If it did, everyone who watches Netflix would be fluent. And we know that's not true. The real reason you're not improving is because you haven't been taught how to listen actively. You haven't been given the tools or mindset to break down what you hear and turn it into real understanding. And without understanding, there's no fluency. Fluency doesn't start with speaking. It starts with comprehension. It starts the moment your brain hears a sound, a phrase, a sentence, and doesn't panic. It starts when you stop translating in your head and begin feeling the rhythm and meaning of English naturally. This episode has one simple but powerful goal: to help you take control of your listening practice and build real skills that lead to fluency. We'll talk about specific habits you can use, how to work with short audio clips, how to repeat phrases out loud, and how to train your ear to hear the real sounds of English. Not textbook English, but the English people actually use every day. We'll also discuss how to stop depending on subtitles, how to improve your focus, and how to measure your progress in a way that motivates you, instead of making you feel like you're failing. Because I know how discouraging it can feel. That feeling when you study hard, but seem stuck at the same level. But once you understand what's going wrong and learn how to fix it, everything starts to change. I've seen it so many times. A listener from Warsaw wrote to me after changing her listening practice. She'd been watching English shows every night with subtitles, believing she was improving. But when her company hired a consultant from London, she could barely follow meetings. She felt all her effort was wasted, but it wasn't. She just needed a new approach. When she started using short audio practice, repeating phrases every morning while making coffee, things clicked. It didn't take hours, just focused attention. She stopped reading and started listening. And that's when real improvement began. Another listener from Mexico City told me he'd thought he had a listening problem for years, but was trying to listen to full podcasts made for native speakers without preparation. Once he started practicing with shorter segments, slowing them down, and listening several times before moving on, he suddenly caught phrases that had always confused him. He said, "Julia, It felt like someone finally turned on the lights. That's the kind of result I want for you. And it starts with today's episode. If you stay with me through this conversation, I promise you'll walk away understanding what's holding you back. And more importantly, how to move forward. It's not a mystery. It's not about talent. It's about the right kind of practice. So if you've been confused, overwhelmed, or even a little frustrated, that's okay. That just means you care. You want to get better. And now you're in the right place to do that. You're going to learn how to turn passive listening into active growth. You'll learn how to take what feels confusing and break it down into something manageable. And most of all, you'll learn how to make listening not just something you do, but something that actually works for you. Because once you understand the problem, the solution becomes possible. And that's exactly what we're here for today. Before we go any further, I want to invite you to become part of something bigger. If you're here with me right now, listening carefully, trying to grow, trying to improve your English, not just for a test or a certificate, but for real life, then you're exactly the kind of person this podcast was created for. This is not just a podcast. This is a place where people from around the world come together to do something powerful, to learn, to connect, and to finally become confident in English. And I don't want you to miss what's coming next. So, if this episode is already making you think differently, or if you found even one sentence that speaks to your experience, take a second now. Hit the like button. It may seem small, but it tells the platform that this content matters. It tells it to show this episode to more learners just like you. Learners who are serious about change, tired of going through the motions, and who want to hear something real. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. When you subscribe, you don't just get notified about new episodes. You become part of this global community we're building here together. Every week, we bring new episodes that go beyond traditional teaching. We're not just reviewing grammar or giving vocabulary lists. We're diving deep into the emotional and practical side of language learning. Talking about mindset, motivation, and daily habits that really make a difference. And I say we because it's not just me talking. Every story I share, every tip I give comes from real people, listeners like you who send their stories, struggles, and victories. Maybe you're listening from Paris, Bangkok, São Paulo, Johannesburg, or Toronto. No matter where you are, if you've ever felt stuck in your English journey, if you've ever felt like something's missing but you couldn't quite put your finger on it, this podcast was made for you. We're creating a safe, supportive space where it's okay to be imperfect, where it's okay to say, I don't understand this yet, and no, you won't be judged, where every mistake is part of the process and every small win is celebrated. When you subscribe, you stay connected to that space. You don't miss moments when we uncover something new. Those little mindset shifts that make a big difference in your daily practice. You'll hear stories of people just like you who thought they'd never speak naturally, who doubted themselves, but now feel more confident every time they open their mouth. And you'll learn the exact steps they took to get there. We'll explore new techniques in the coming weeks, listening skills, pronunciation training, thinking in English without translating. And I want you there for all of it. It's easy to feel alone when learning a language. Maybe people around you don't understand your goals. Maybe you feel like nobody sees how hard you're working. But here, you're not alone. When you join this community, you're surrounded by thousands of learners walking the same path. We're not chasing perfection. We're chasing progress, celebrating effort, building confidence from the inside out. If that speaks to you, if you've been looking for a space that feels real, human, supportive, I hope you'll subscribe and keep walking with us. I'll be right here every week, bringing you strategies that work and stories that inspire. When you leave a comment or share your thoughts, you don't just help yourself, you help others too. You remind someone else that they're not alone. And there's something else. In upcoming episodes, I'll reveal more truths that no one talks about in traditional English classes. Truths that affect your ability to understand fast conversations, think in English, and speak more naturally. Things you probably haven't heard before, because I've collected them from learners who made it work after years of struggle. I want you to hear those stories. I want you to learn from them. And I want you to feel what it's like to finally have clarity. If you're already subscribed, thank you. You're the reason this podcast exists. Your presence, your commitment, your listening, it matters. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy you found us. Let's keep growing together. Like this episode, subscribe. Share it with someone who needs it. Maybe a friend who's stuck, a coworker who wants to improve, or a classmate who's lost motivation. Help us grow this community by sharing knowledge. Every time you do, you make this space stronger. You help someone else realize that real change is possible. I believe in you. I believe in the power of community. And I believe when we support each other with honest stories, practical strategies, and a clear path, there's nothing we can't do. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking your learning seriously. And thank you for being part of English Without Limit. Let me tell you a story about someone I think you might relate to. His name is Pedro. He's from Lisbon, Portugal. Like many of you, Pedro had been studying English for years. Disciplined, motivated, serious about improving. He had all the right materials, grammar books, vocabulary lists, podcasts, even English-speaking YouTubers. He listened to English almost every day, while commuting, cooking, sometimes before bed. He believed if he kept exposing himself to the language, things would click eventually. But they didn't. Pedro could understand some words, some sentences here and there, but when he tried to watch movies without subtitles, it felt impossible. The characters spoke too fast. He caught a word or two, then lost the meaning completely. Watching TV was like a storm of sound, some familiar, most just noise. In real-life conversations, everything moved too fast for his brain to keep up. He'd think, I know these words. I studied them. Why can't I understand? That question bothered him. He doubted himself. Maybe he wasn't smart enough. Maybe English just wasn't for him. But deep down, he still wanted it. He wanted to feel confident understanding English naturally, without feeling lost or needing subtitles. Pedro did what most people do. He doubled down, listened to more audio, more podcasts, more YouTube videos, but didn't change the way he was listening. That's what kept him stuck. He was just hearing English, not training with it. Treating listening as background noise, instead of using it as a tool for real understanding. That's something many learners do without realizing it. When I first heard Pedro's story, it reminded me how easy it is to confuse hearing with listening. We think if English plays in the background, we improve. But what Pedro needed wasn't more exposure, it was a different strategy. He needed to slow things down, literally. He started rewatching short clips from his favorite shows, but this time with a method. First, listen once without subtitles, then rewind and listen again, with English subtitles. No translating, no focusing on grammar, just paying attention to how words connect, what the actors' mouths do, what expressions match the words. He repeated short lines out loud, sometimes over and over, until he could say them almost at the same speed and rhythm. And little by little, something changed. Pedro started noticing patterns. He realized native speakers connect words in ways he hadn't been taught. What do you want to do? Became more like, what do you want to do? And phrases like, I'm going to turned into, I'm gonna. These were things he had seen in books, but never truly heard in real conversations until he slowed down and really paid attention. He realized his brain wasn't broken. He just hadn't trained it to recognize spoken English as it actually exists in the real world. He also started using something simple but powerful: shadowing. Pedro would pick a short audio clip and repeat it out loud, trying to match the rhythm, tone, and pronunciation. Not to be perfect, but to develop what I call listening muscle memory. After a few weeks, Pedro wasn't just recognizing more. He was reacting faster. He could catch phrases in songs that used to fly by. He could follow more of what was happening in a movie, even without subtitles. And most importantly, he didn't feel panicked anymore when someone spoke to him in English. He started to feel like he belonged in the conversation. His progress didn't come from magic. It came from changing the way he approached listening. He stopped trying to absorb everything passively and started treating listening like a skill to be trained. That shift in mindset was the turning point. Pedro's story is one I love to tell because it's not unique. It's the same struggle so many learners face. Maybe the same one you're facing right now. You listen every day. You put in the hours, but you still feel like you're not understanding enough. It's frustrating, especially when you care so much and you're working so hard. But Pedro's story shows us something important. The problem is not you. It's not your ability or your intelligence. The real issue is that no one ever showed you how to listen, not in the way real fluency requires. And once you know that, once you realize there is a method to improve, that there are practical tools that actually make a difference, you stop feeling stuck. You stop hoping for improvement. You start building it. I've seen learners from all over the world tell this same story. People from Rome, Seoul, Cairo, Mumbai, Berlin, Buenos Aires, different locations, different accents. But the challenge is always the same: understanding real spoken English in real situations. And the answer is always in how you listen, how you train, and how you stay patient through the process. Pedro didn't improve overnight, but he stayed consistent. He gave himself permission to struggle. He stopped judging himself for not understanding everything. And that's when he finally started to grow. Now, let's talk about something I believe every English learner needs to hear. It's something I see over and over again. Something that holds people back without them realizing it. Why so many beginners, even motivated ones, fail to improve their listening skills. And the truth is, it's not because they're not trying. It's not because they're lazy or bad at languages. It's because they're using a strategy that doesn't work. I've spoken to so many learners who say the same thing. I listen to English every day. I watch movies, I play podcasts, I follow YouTubers, but I still can't understand real conversations. They feel confused. They think they're doing everything right. And when results don't come, they start to believe something's wrong with them. But the problem isn't them. The problem is how they're listening. Most beginners approach listening passively. They press play and let the audio run in the background. Maybe they're not fully focused, or they hope that by just hearing English, their brain will absorb it. And while exposure is important, it's not enough. Passive listening creates the illusion of improvement, but your brain isn't doing the deep work it needs to truly process the language. Let me explain. Think about how many times you've watched an English movie with subtitles. Maybe you understood the story. Maybe you laughed at the jokes. Maybe you felt proud for watching without dubbing. But here's the question. Were you really listening to the English, or just reading the subtitles? Usually, your brain prioritizes the subtitles. You read fast. You follow the plot. You feel like you're improving your listening. But the truth is, you're not training your ears to catch real spoken English. And it's not your fault. This is how most people learn. We're told the more English we hear, the better we get. But no one teaches us how to listen. Listening is a skill that needs active engagement. It's not just hearing words, it's recognizing sounds, rhythms, speech patterns that are often very different from textbook English. For example, imagine a TV show scene where someone says, "Did you get it?" But in real speech, it sounds like, "Did ya get it?" If you rely on subtitles or transcripts, your brain won't register "didja." You might not even notice it. So next time you hear it in real life, it feels unfamiliar, even though you've seen the phrase before. That's why passive listening creates a gap between what you think you understand and what you can actually recognize in real conversation. This is exactly what happened to Pedro, and it happens to learners all over the world. They depend on subtitles or transcripts as a safety net. And without noticing, they train themselves to read for meaning instead of training their ears. They're not really improving their listening. They're just improving their reading. And those are two very different things. What's worse is that this approach makes you feel like you're making progress. You finish a series, you complete a podcast, you check off your study goals. It feels productive, but then, when you try to speak with someone or understand natural English in the real world, it's like you hit a wall. That's when frustration sets in. You start to wonder, why have I been studying for months? Even years, and I still feel lost in fast conversations? The truth is, progress in listening doesn't come from watching hundreds of hours of content. It comes from how you interact with the language during those hours. Are you listening with intention? Are you trying to understand the sounds, the stress, the intonation? Are you pausing and repeating? Are you shadowing what you hear? Training your pronunciation and listening at the same time? Most beginners don't do this. They press play, maybe listen for 20 minutes, and hope their brain is doing the rest. But the brain doesn't work that way. It needs attention. It needs repetition. It needs engagement. Passive listening might help you become familiar with the idea of English, but it won't help you develop real comprehension. It won't prepare you for the way people speak naturally, fast, connected with idioms, slang, and reduced forms. Now, I'm not saying subtitles or transcriptions are bad. They can be useful tools, especially when you're just starting out. But they should not be the main focus. They should support your listening practice, not replace it. If you always depend on them, you never give your ears a chance to adapt. You never build the skills needed to follow a conversation when there's no text to rely on. One of the biggest mindset shifts I try to teach my students is this. Listening is not something that just happens to you. It's something you do actively. It's a workout. You need to train for it. Just like you wouldn't build muscle by watching other people exercise. You can't improve your listening by just being around English. You have to practice in a way that challenges your brain to recognize and process the sounds. And here's another thing most learners don't realize. Your brain is capable of adapting. Even if right now you feel spoken English is too fast or unclear, that doesn't mean you'll always feel that way. Your brain is incredibly flexible, but you have to give it the right kind of training. That's why it's so important to shift from passive habits to active ones. So many learners give up too soon because they believe the problem is their memory, their level, or even their age. But the real problem is that no one taught them how to listen in a way that leads to growth. That's what keeps people stuck. Not a lack of talent, but a lack of strategy. When you start listening with intention, everything changes. You start noticing the music of the language, you hear patterns, you recognize expressions, and slowly, your brain starts to predict what's coming next. That's when real understanding begins. Not just word by word, but phrase by phrase, sentence by sentence, in real time. That's how you move from guessing to following, from surviving to participating, from frustrated to confident. And it all starts with changing the way you listen. Let's take a moment to reframe the way we think about listening. Because here's something I've learned after working with hundreds of English learners around the world. Most people approach listening as if it's a subject in school. They think they're supposed to study listening. They imagine it's like studying vocabulary, grammar, or pronunciation. But that mindset, even though it feels logical, is actually one of the main reasons people get stuck and stay frustrated for so long. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right when it comes to listening? You're watching videos, you're using subtitles, you're replaying audio, you're even reading transcripts. But still, when it's time to understand real spoken English, in movies, conversations, podcasts, you feel lost. You catch words, but not the full message. You feel like your brain can't keep up. And over time, that frustration builds. You start to feel like maybe listening is just harder for you than for other people. But what if I told you, the problem isn't you? It's how you've been taught to think about listening. You see, listening isn't a subject. It's not like memorizing facts or completing worksheets. Listening is a skill. It's something you train, not something you study. And just like any other skill, like playing piano, cooking, or swimming, it doesn't develop from theory alone. It grows through practice, repetitive, focused, intentional practice. And the more you see it this way, the more progress you'll make. Think about someone learning to dance. They don't learn just by watching videos of professionals. They have to move their own body. They have to try, fail, adjust, try again. They don't learn by reading about dance techniques, they learn by doing it. And that's exactly how you should approach listening. It's not passive. It's not something that magically improves just because English is playing in the background while you clean the house. Listening must be active. You need to engage with it. Break it down, repeat it, respond to it, mimic it. When you start to see listening as a physical skill your brain needs to build, everything changes. You stop asking, "Why don't I understand?" and instead ask, "What do I need to train to get better?" That small shift in mindset is powerful. It pulls you out of doubt and into a space where growth is possible. And this is where I want to challenge your perspective. I want you to stop thinking of listening as something you get or don't get. It's not a talent you're born with. It's not something you either have or don't have. It's a process. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, if you train it regularly and with purpose, it grows stronger. So, how do we train that muscle? We train by doing things that force our brain to notice more. That means slowing down the audio sometimes. That means repeating a phrase several times until your ear catches every word. That means shadowing, repeating what you hear in real time. That means asking yourself, "What words am I missing?" instead of just watching something and moving on. This is how real listening practice looks. It's not glamorous. It's not always comfortable, but it's effective. And the more you do it, the better your brain becomes at processing spoken English, not just as separate words, but as flowing, natural language. Now, some learners worry they're not improving fast enough because their memory isn't good. Others think it's because of their age or their accent or because they didn't grow up speaking English. But I'm here to tell you, none of that is the real problem. The real issue is that most people aren't training listening the way it needs to be trained. When you start to reframe listening this way, you take control. You stop blaming yourself, and you start taking real action. You begin to notice things you didn't before, like how native speakers reduce sounds, connect words, and use intonation. You start to catch the music of English, and once your ear starts to catch that music, your understanding improves naturally, without needing to memorize anything. And here's another benefit of this mindset shift. It makes your learning journey more enjoyable, because now you're not stuck waiting for the day everything clicks. You're in control of your improvement. Every practice session becomes a step forward. Even when it's difficult, you know you're building something valuable. You're building a real skill. This is especially important if you've ever compared yourself to others and felt behind. Maybe you've met someone who speaks fluently and thought, "Why can they do it and I can't?" But you don't know how much listening practice that person has done. Maybe they've spent years actively training, or maybe they were exposed to English naturally from a young age. Either way, you're not behind. You're just starting with a different experience. And once you start training with the right mindset, you'll begin to catch up. There's something really freeing about this mindset. When you stop treating listening like a subject to study and instead treat it like a skill to build, the pressure disappears. You're no longer chasing perfection. You're no longer afraid of not understanding everything, because you understand mistakes and confusion are part of the process. They're proof your brain is working, adjusting, learning. So from now on, ask yourself, how can I train my listening today? Not, what should I watch? Or, what app should I use? But how can I engage with English in a way that challenges my ears and helps me grow? That one question can guide you to make smarter decisions every day. Because the truth is, it's not about how much time you spend. It's about how you use that time. You could spend 2 hours watching TV in English and learn almost nothing. Or you could spend 15 minutes working actively with a short audio clip, pausing, repeating, shadowing, and make real progress. It's not the hours, it's the intention behind those hours. And here's something else I've noticed. When learners use this mindset, their confidence grows. They stop feeling overwhelmed. They start to see that yes, English is fast, but it's also learnable. They realize understanding doesn't come from luck. It comes from effort, focus, and training. And that's a powerful realization. You deserve to feel that confidence too. You deserve to feel that listening isn't mysterious or unreachable, but a skill you can fully master. And I truly believe once you shift your thinking about listening, you'll open the door to a whole new level of fluency. Because fluency doesn't begin with speaking, it begins with understanding. And understanding begins with training your ears, one step at a time. Let me tell you about someone who might remind you a little of yourself. Her name is Ayumi, and she lives in Tokyo. When Ayumi first started learning English, she was incredibly committed. She followed every piece of advice she could find. She bought textbooks, watched YouTube tutorials, joined online classes, downloaded apps, everything. For a long time, she thought she was doing everything right. Her grammar was improving, her vocabulary was growing. She could read basic texts without much effort, but there was one skill that made her feel stuck, no matter how hard she worked: listening. Ayumi used to sit for hours watching English videos, interviews, Netflix shows, TED Talks, you name it. She always had the subtitles on, of course, because without them, she felt completely lost. The moment she tried turning the subtitles off, her confidence disappeared. It felt like everyone was speaking too fast, like all the words were mashed together in one big sound. And the worst part? She often recognized the words when she saw them written down. But when those same words were spoken in real conversations, they vanished. It was frustrating, exhausting, confusing. She used to wonder, why can I understand so much when I read, but not when I listen? She even began to doubt her abilities. She thought, maybe my brain just isn't wired for this. Maybe I'll never understand native English speakers unless they speak slowly and clearly. That thought was always in the back of her mind, making her feel like a failure. And yet, Ayumi didn't give up. She kept searching for answers. One day, while scrolling through a language learning forum, she came across a post from someone who talked about training listening like a musician trains their ear. That phrase stopped her. It felt different. Not studying, not reviewing, training. That was the first time she realized maybe her approach was the problem, not her ability. She started to dig deeper. She read about active listening. She discovered the difference between watching something and actually engaging with it. She learned about shadowing, repetition, focused listening, and how to break down a short audio clip to hear every sound. And slowly, something inside her shifted. Instead of trying to watch long movies hoping something would click, she decided to try something new. She chose a short podcast episode, just 5 minutes, and listened to it in a completely different way. She turned off the subtitles. She played the first sentence, paused, and listened again. Then again, and again. The first few tries, she still couldn't catch everything. But this time, she didn't panic. She told herself, "I'm training now. This is part of the process." Then she listened to the same sentence while reading the transcript, just to compare. She finally saw where she was missing the sounds. She noticed how the speaker connected the words. It wasn't that the words weren't there. They sounded different when spoken naturally. She kept doing this every day. 5 minutes of real focused listening. No multitasking, no background noise, just her, the audio, and her notebook. She began to write down the phrases she couldn't catch and repeat them aloud. She mimicked the rhythm and tone of the speaker. At first, it felt slow, but it was powerful. After just 2 weeks, she went back to one of the same podcast episodes she had struggled with before. And this time, she understood more. A lot more. She could hear the words that used to disappear. And that gave her confidence she had never felt before. The turning point for Ayumi wasn't magical. It wasn't overnight, but it was real. And it happened because she stopped blaming herself and started changing her strategy. She stopped thinking that listening was just about exposure and started treating it like a skill to develop. A month later, Ayumi found herself walking through the streets of Tokyo listening to a podcast while commuting. For the first time, she didn't need subtitles or a transcript. She wasn't catching every single word, but she understood the message. She could follow the topic, feel the emotion in the speaker's voice, and even laugh at the jokes. And most importantly, she wasn't afraid anymore. She had proven to herself that listening in English was possible. She just needed the right mindset and method. I tell you her story because it's one I've seen many times. Dedicated learners stuck in their listening journey. Not because they're lazy or untalented, but because they're following the wrong method. They're waiting for listening to improve by itself, by simply watching more and more content. But understanding fast, natural English doesn't happen by chance. It happens through practice, smart, intentional practice. Ayumi's breakthrough came when she realized it was okay to slow down and really work with the sound of the language. She stopped trying to understand everything in real time and instead gave her brain the chance to learn the patterns. Over time, her listening became more automatic. She no longer needed to translate in her head. She could just listen and understand. And do you know what else changed? Her speaking. As her listening improved, so did her fluency. She started using more natural phrases in conversation because she had heard them so many times in context. She started to sound more confident, more fluid. And that's because listening is the foundation. When your brain is used to hearing natural English, your own English starts to reflect that rhythm and clarity. So, if you feel like Ayumi did, if you're putting in the effort but not seeing results, maybe it's time to stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What can I change in the way I practice?" Because there is a path forward. You just need to walk it with purpose, like Ayumi did. She's still learning, of course. We all are. But now, every time she listens to a podcast or watches a video, she feels empowered instead of lost. She knows how to listen in a way that helps her grow. And that's something you can do too. One of the biggest breakthroughs in my own language learning, and something I've seen again and again with students around the world, is the moment you stop relying on your eyes and start training your ears. It's such a simple idea, but it changes everything. Most people don't even realize they're listening with their eyes. What do I mean? Watching English videos with subtitles on, reading along while listening, following transcripts word for word. It feels like listening, and it can feel comfortable, but it's not really helping you build the skill that matters most: real, independent listening. Let me be very clear. Subtitles are not bad. They can be helpful when used the right way. But if they're your only tool, they will limit your progress. When you're always reading subtitles, your brain isn't doing the hard work of hearing English sounds. It's translating what it sees into meaning, not truly understanding what it hears. That's why so many learners feel confident watching a movie with subtitles, but completely lost when the subtitles are gone. You're not really training your ears. You're just reading fast in English. So, what do I suggest instead? Start small, start focused, and most importantly, start using only your ears. Choose short pieces of audio. Could be a 1-minute podcast clip, a short voice message, or a single scene from a series. The key is that it should be short enough for you to focus on every detail. Don't worry if you don't understand everything the first time. That's normal. The first time you listen, you're just getting the overall feel. Let your ears work without help from text. Ask yourself, what do I hear? What words can I catch? What's the tone? What's the rhythm? Then play it again and again. You don't need to rush. Listen actively. Try to imitate the speaker's rhythm, pauses, pronunciation. This isn't about perfection. It's about awakening your ear to how English really sounds. Pay attention to how words connect. In real spoken English, we don't say each word clearly and slowly. We link words together. We reduce sounds. We change intonation based on emotion. If you're only used to reading, you'll miss all of that. Here's a simple exercise I often give my students. Find a clip that's about 30 to 60 seconds long. Listen once. No text. Try to understand the general idea. Then listen again, pausing after each sentence. Repeat what you heard. Don't read it. Say it from memory. Try to match the speaker's tone and speed. If you miss a part, go back and try again. Only after several listens, if you really can't understand, then check the transcript or turn on subtitles. That's when text becomes a support, not a crutch. One of my students, Raj from Mumbai, used to listen to English news every day while reading subtitles. He thought he was improving, but when he turned off the text, he could barely follow a sentence. He felt discouraged at first, but when he started this kind of ear training, just a few minutes a day, he noticed a shift within 2 weeks. He told me, "For the first time, I'm not just hearing noise, I'm actually recognizing words naturally." And that's the goal. We want your brain to start recognizing English the way native speakers say it, not just the way it looks on a page. Let me remind you, listening is a skill, not knowledge. And like any skill, it gets better with training. Think of how musicians learn. They don't just read sheet music. They train their ears. They listen to melodies, rhythms, tone. They replay a section again and again until they can hear and feel the music in their body. It's the same with language. You're not just studying a code, you're learning to hear it in motion. If you've been relying too much on your eyes, it might feel strange or uncomfortable at first to listen without reading. But that discomfort is a sign of growth. It means your ears are waking up. It means your brain is doing the real work of learning. Trust that process. It's not about understanding everything right away. It's about building the habit of listening actively, training your ears to pick up real English as it's spoken every day. One technique that works for many people is called micro-listening. Take a single sentence and break it down into parts. Maybe you don't catch how the words connect. Maybe a word sounds completely different than you imagined. That's okay. Replay that sentence until it's clear. Then try to say it yourself. Match the intonation. Feel the rhythm in your mouth. You're not only improving listening, you're improving speaking at the same time. You don't need fancy tools, just your phone and headphones. You don't need hours of practice either. Even 10 minutes a day, done with real focus, can create powerful results over time. You're teaching your brain to recognize the music of English, the flow, the sound patterns, the stress. And once you start hearing those things clearly, your confidence will grow. You won't panic when someone speaks quickly. You'll start catching phrases, not just words. You'll start feeling the language. So here's what I want you to remember today. Reading helps, but real listening requires ears, not eyes. You have to give yourself permission to step away from subtitles and start listening with intention. Your ears need time to adjust. Your brain needs time to process new sounds. And yes, it will feel strange at first, but if you stick with it, you'll notice one day you won't need subtitles at all. You'll be sitting on a bus or walking through your city, listening to a podcast or conversation, and you'll suddenly realize you understand more than ever before. And that moment is worth every minute of practice. One of the most powerful tools you have when learning to listen in English is repetition. It might sound simple, but repeating the same audio multiple times can change everything about how well you understand the language. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, Julia, listening to the same thing over and over sounds boring. Or, I want to hear new things all the time. I've been there too. And I want to share with you why repetition is not only effective, but also a smart and strategic way to train your brain to recognize English naturally. When we listen to something for the first time, our brain is doing a lot of heavy lifting. You're trying to catch new words, understand unfamiliar accents, and follow the meaning behind the sentences. It's totally normal if you miss many details at this stage. The first time is about exposure, getting used to the sounds and rhythm of the language. But here's the thing. Our brains don't learn best from just one exposure. We need to meet the same material multiple times, in different contexts, for it to really sink in. Think about when you watch a movie or listen to a song you love. You don't just hear it once and suddenly know every word. You watch or listen multiple times. And each time, you notice something new. A phrase you didn't catch before, a pronunciation detail, or the emotion behind the words. That's how your brain learns to recognize patterns and absorb meaning naturally. Repetition is the key to building those mental connections. Now, I'm not talking about passive repetition, where you put on the same audio in the background while doing other things. I'm talking about active, intentional repetition. This means listening with focus and attention, noticing different parts of the audio each time. The first time, you might listen to get the general idea. The second time, pay attention to specific words or phrases you didn't understand before. The third time, try to imitate the speaker's pronunciation or rhythm. Each repetition helps you process the language at a deeper level. Another important tip is to space out your repetitions throughout the day. Don't just listen to the same clip 5 times in a row and get tired or bored. Instead, listen once in the morning, again during your lunch break, and once more in the evening. This spacing technique gives your brain time to rest and process what it heard, making the learning stronger and longer lasting. It's like watering a plant little by little rather than flooding it all at once. Let me share a story about one of my students, Lina from Berlin. Lina was frustrated because she felt stuck listening to podcasts. She could catch some words, but the meaning didn't come easily. I suggested she pick one short podcast episode, or even a small part of an episode, and listen to it 3 times a day. At first, she thought it was too repetitive and boring, but she committed to it. After just a week, Lina told me she noticed something amazing. She started recognizing phrases she hadn't before and felt more confident understanding the speakers. Her brain was finally building the patterns it needed to hear English naturally. This is the magic of repetition. It helps your brain rewire itself. When you hear the same sounds and phrases repeatedly, your brain becomes more efficient at recognizing them. It's similar to how athletes train their muscles. By repeating movements over and over until they become automatic. Listening is a skill, and repetition trains that skill. But I want to be clear, you don't have to listen to long or difficult content every time. Start with short clips that you enjoy. It could be a dialogue from a movie, a part of a podcast, or even a motivational speech. The goal is to listen enough times that your brain stops struggling to decode the sounds and starts to understand the message more effortlessly. As you improve, you can gradually challenge yourself with longer or more complex materials. But the principle stays the same. Repetition builds understanding. To keep repetition from becoming boring, try to mix it up a bit. After listening actively a few times, you can change your approach. For example, listen once without looking at the transcript. Then the next time, read the transcript while listening. The third time, try shadowing. Repeat what you hear immediately after the speaker. These variations keep your practice fresh and cover different aspects of listening and speaking skills. Also, it's important to choose materials that are interesting or relevant to you. If you're passionate about a topic, repetition won't feel like a chore because you're curious about what's being said. For instance, if you love technology, find short talks or interviews about the latest gadgets. If you enjoy cooking, listen to recipe videos or food podcasts. Your interest will keep you motivated to repeat the audio several times. Remember, the goal of repetition is not to memorize everything word for word. It's to help your brain get familiar with the sounds, rhythms, and flow of English, so you can understand it naturally when you hear it in real life. It's like training your ear muscles to be stronger and faster. Over time, you'll find that your comprehension improves and your confidence grows. You won't need to ask people to repeat themselves as often, and you'll enjoy conversations more because you're not constantly struggling to keep up. Another great way to use repetition is with chunking. That means breaking down the audio into small parts, maybe 1 or 2 sentences, and repeating just those chunks until they become clear. Then move to the next chunk. This approach makes the process manageable and gives you a feeling of progress as you master each part. You can even write down the phrases you find difficult and practice those separately. Sometimes when learners get stuck, it's because they try to understand everything at once. That's overwhelming and discouraging. Repetition allows you to focus on small, manageable pieces repeatedly, so your brain can digest the language step by step. It's like building a house brick by brick. Each time you repeat, you're strengthening your foundation. I want you to trust the process of repetition, even if it feels slow at first. Real progress takes time, and your brain needs these repeated experiences to build solid listening skills. You're creating new neural pathways that will help you understand English effortlessly in the future. If you're serious about improving your listening, I challenge you to pick one short audio clip today. Listen to it 3 times, spaced throughout your day. Notice what you hear each time. Try to repeat what you hear after each listen. Then come back the next day and do it again, with the same clip or a new one. This small habit can make a huge difference over just a few weeks. Repetition is not boring. It's powerful. It's the secret ingredient to turning confusion into clarity, frustration into confidence. So make it a part of your listening practice and watch how your understanding of English grows every day. I want to talk to you about something really important: the shift from perfection to progress. Let's begin here. Think about a time when you tried to listen to something in English, maybe a podcast, a conversation, or a movie scene, and you felt frustrated. You didn't catch every word. You rewound. You turned on subtitles. And still, you felt lost. I want you to know that feeling is completely normal. And more than that, it means you are right where you should be in your learning journey. Because the truth is, listening skills develop gradually, and expecting perfect understanding every time, that only leads to burnout and self-doubt. That's why today I want you to shift your mindset from chasing perfection to celebrating progress. Let me tell you a story. One of my students, Sarah from Milan, was talented, motivated, and hardworking. But she was also really hard on herself. She wanted to understand every single word. And when she didn't, she felt like she had failed. But over time, I helped her change how she looked at her learning. We started focusing on what she could understand, not what she couldn't. One day she said to me, "Julia, I didn't understand the whole podcast, but I caught the main idea. That feels like a win to me now." That moment was powerful. She let go of chasing perfection and started recognizing her progress. And you know what happened next? She improved faster because she relaxed, she stayed consistent, and she kept showing up. That's what I want for you. Because learning to listen in English isn't about perfection. It's about showing up again and again, trusting the process and allowing yourself to grow. Think of it like learning to play piano or training for a marathon. You don't expect to get it all right the first day. You celebrate the small wins, hitting a few correct notes, running just a little farther. Listening works the same way. Every time you catch one more word, every time you understand a little more of the message, that's progress. And progress deserves to be celebrated. When you make space for progress, you reduce fear, you reduce pressure, and you open up room for real learning. You're no longer afraid to try or to listen to something a little challenging. Because now, Instead of fearing failure, you're looking for growth. It creates a positive cycle. More practice, more progress, more motivation. So let me offer you a simple image. Your learning journey is like climbing a mountain. You don't leap to the top. You take one step at a time. Each step, each listen, each small improvement is worth celebrating. Another helpful shift? Focus on what you do understand. Even if you only catch 40% of what someone says, that's still 40% more than yesterday. Focus on that. Build from there. Let that give you confidence. Fluency is a long-term goal, and you're building it layer by layer. Every time you listen, even if you don't realize it, your brain is picking up new sounds, new rhythms, and new patterns. So be kind to yourself. Be patient. You're not behind. You're building. Right now. Starting today, I want you to notice your small wins. Maybe you understood a sentence without subtitles. Maybe you listened to a news clip and got the main point. Maybe your brain stopped translating and just absorbed the meaning naturally. Those are powerful moments. They matter, they count. And every time you notice one, you reinforce your belief. I can do this. And that belief, it's one of your most powerful tools. Here's a tip. It's better to listen for a few minutes every day than for hours once a week. Daily repetition builds habits, and habits shape your fluency. It's like watering a plant. A little every day is better than a flood once in a while. Also, listen to your inner voice. Are you cheering yourself on or tearing yourself down? That voice matters. Be your own coach. Be your own friend. Say things like, I didn't understand everything, but I understood more than yesterday. I showed up today. That's a win. Keep those positive words with you. And here's one more reminder. Why are you learning English? Is it to travel, to connect with people, to watch your favorite shows without subtitles? Keep that reason close to your heart, because that's what keeps you going. Not perfection, but connection. That's the real goal. So, as you move forward, keep this mindset close. Progress, not perfection. Every word you hear, every phrase you understand, is a step forward. Celebrate that. And remember, consistency will carry you farther than pressure ever could. Learning English doesn't have to be stressful. Let it be an adventure. Let it be joyful. And let every small improvement fuel your belief that fluency is coming. You are doing great. And I'm proud of you for showing up. Now let's go a little deeper into why listening is so important, not just for understanding, but for speaking too. Because the way you listen shapes the way you speak. Think about this. When you listen to real English, whether it's a podcast, a conversation, or even a song, your brain is learning more than just vocabulary. It's learning rhythm, tone, flow, and connection. These are the things that make your English sound natural. And one of the best ways to absorb these things is through a technique called shadowing. It's simple. You listen to a short sentence or phrase, and then immediately repeat it out loud. Try to match the pronunciation, the intonation, and the speed. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, if it feels a little awkward, that's a good sign. It means your mouth and your brain are training together. And the more you shadow, the more fluent and natural your speaking becomes. You don't need to wait to be ready to speak. Listening is your preparation. So next time you listen to something in English, try this. Pause. Repeat. Feel the rhythm. You are building muscle memory for speaking clearly and confidently. Listening is not passive, it's powerful. So today, remember this: progress over perfection, confidence over fear, and small steps over big pressure. You're doing more than you think, and every listen counts. Let's talk about something that can completely transform your English skills. Not just your listening, but your speaking fluency, your confidence, and your natural flow in real conversations. It all starts with one powerful shift: using listening as a tool to train your speaking. You see, the key is to practice regularly. So your speaking muscles get stronger and your ears get sharper. This method is like a workout for your mouth and your brain. It's not just passive learning, it's active training, and it works. Let me tell you about a student of mine, Min, from Seoul. Min understood English well, but when it came to speaking, she froze. Her thoughts were in English, but her mouth couldn't catch up. When I introduced her to shadowing, she was hesitant, nervous. But after just a few weeks of repeating short English phrases out loud, matching tone, rhythm, and pronunciation, she noticed something amazing. She started speaking more smoothly, with confidence, with natural rhythm. What changed? She wasn't just listening anymore. She was speaking through listening.